Last month, we saw about a 10% spike in pending home sales. The month before that, sales dropped nearly 40%, largely driven by higher interest rates. Now, fast forward to this month, we're seeing sales prices increase again, pending sales are up, and at the same time, we're seeing a surge of new homes hitting the market. In fact, new listings jumped over 40% month over month. That's a significant increase in inventory. So, what does that mean? It means buyers are starting to get more options, but it also means sellers are facing more competition. Now, layer this on top of what's happening in the big picture. There's a lot of uncertainty in the headlines right now. We've got geopolitical tensions overseas, oil and gas are elevated, and people aren't quite sure how long that's going to last. And whether you realize it or not, those headlines impact how confident buyers and sellers feel. So, as we move into the spring market here in San Antonio, the real question is, are we heating back up or are we leveling out? First and foremost, to begin noticing whether or not we are leveling off or heating up, let's look at the market type that we're in. And today it shows that we are still in a balanced market. In fact, we move closer to the middle of a balanced market month over month. As you can see here from the inventory increase here, 11.75 months worth of inventory, nearly 12% increase in inventory available here in San Antonio, a 98.3% sold to list price percentage, which really bodes well for sellers that are pricing their properties correctly. So instead of having about a 97% difference, or rather 3% difference, we're about a 2% difference in final sales price versus list price. So the pricing strategy that a lot of sellers are adopting is working. Okay. In fact, this means to me that buyers are willing to pay list price or more in some instances to keep this number so high. Days on the market, we saw a decline in days on market down to 70 days, a 12, almost 13% month over month decrease in days on market. The sold price, again, bodes well for sellers pricing their properties correctly, up about 5.5%. Okay, it's a 299. Next up, median estimated property values, relatively flat, down 0.2% month over month, but overall 12-month change plus 0.3%. So almost really no change here. I attribute this to the fluctuations of the interest rates. We had some higher interest rates, and then we had lower interest rates, and now we're back to higher interest rates. So we're going to see that playing out here, and you can see that here in the line graph here, really flat on estimated home values. And now for the biggest change, new listings in San Antonio, newly listed homes in San Antonio came in with a median list price of $300,950. It's almost 1% month over month increase. The biggest news, number of properties, 3,214 new properties came to the market. That's a 41.6% month over month increase. So a huge jump in the number of new listings. Yes, some of these listings could be homes that were being sold previous year because we now have expires and cancels and all that good stuff. And they come in, though, and reprice their home. So these are all new listings that have just hit the market. In fact, looking here at this graph, we're almost at the peak of new listing activity that we noticed over the years past. As you can see, we peaked back in like May of 2023 for new listings, June of 2022 of new listings. Last year, we peaked in May for new listings in San Antonio, May 2025. And now we're about even with that now, and it's only April. So we'll see what the months ahead bring for us with new listing activity, but we are really on par already for new listing activity. So good for buyers to have more new listings to choose from, more competition for sellers to contend with. And then active listings. This one here contributes to a lot of the activity that sellers have to contend with and competition. The typical active listing that's been on the market over 10 days, $299,000. That's actually up 1.4% month over month. And the number of properties that are actively on the market, already past that honeymoon stage of new listing, 8,796 properties. That's a 9.1% month over month increase. So more competition. We are, in fact, ahead of where we were last year, same time in 2025. See, there's March 2026, 8,800 active listings. And we go back to March of last year, 8,555 new listings. So a little over 300, about 300 new listings or active listings more this year than we had last year. So we could eclipse our peak active listings potentially, depending on what sellers decide to do in the coming months, whether they list now or later in the season. We could eclipse what we saw last year with active listings. So it could be more competition for sellers in the market and more opportunities for buyers to negotiate throughout the year. New pending listings. These are homes that just went under contract in San Antonio, and the new pending listings for the month of March are down $296,994, and the number of new pending listings is actually up. So good news for some of the sellers out there. They are seeing a little bit less maybe in their neighborhood if they're lucky, but 1,556 properties were put under contract in the month of March, and that is up 4.4% month over month. Now the days on the market for these down to 52 days on the market. So these homes were priced really well, so they flew off the market. As you can see, we're kind of on an uptick here. We had a low for pending listings previously in December, and now we're climbing out of that low. Pending listings, these were left over from the month before that made it into March. Almost no change in list price, but the number of properties for pending up almost 12%, 2,017 properties that were pending in March. And again, we saw that low there for pending home sales in December, and we're now climbing out of that low for pending home sales. We'll see if that continues with all of the headlines that we've seen recently. Sold listings in San Antonio, homes that got sold in San Antonio, 299,000. That is up 5.5% month over month. That's the list price. And the number of properties, 1,379 properties. That's up 5.2% month over month. Again, 2 months ago, we had a low, 39% drop in sold listing activity. And now we're, again, climbing out of that hole here for sold listings. And then finally, supply, months of inventory. We're at a 5.42 months worth of inventory. That's how long it would take us to burn through all the inventory at this level if we didn't see any more new listings. And then again, last month change, a 11.8% increase in supply. So that's a pretty big jump in supply. I attribute that to, again, that new listing activity and the actual sales activity netting out 11.8% change in supply. So here's the bottom line. The San Antonio housing market isn't surging, and it's not collapsing either. It's stabilizing. And in a stabilizing market, strategy matters more than ever. If you're a buyer, this could be your window to negotiate better terms, especially on homes that have been sitting. And if you're a seller, pricing correctly and presenting your home well is what separates the homes that sell from the ones that sit on the market. Now, if you're even thinking about making a move, whether that's buying, selling, or just trying to figure out what your options are, I'd be happy to walk you through your specific situation. You can call or text me directly at 210-260-6617 for a no obligation consultation. Again, that's 210-260-6617. And I'll see you on the next update.